The identification of the sword of Goliath and of David and of Laban provides additional meaning to two separate but related scriptural stories, the beheadings of Goliath and Laban. Both Goliath and Laban were not simply slain, they were beheaded with their own swords. In Goliath's case, David took Goliath's head back as a trophy of war. In both cases, the sword and armor of the vanquished enemy was appropriated. The beheadings in both cases were extraordinary actions and from a certain point of view unnecessary. David had already stunned or killed Goliath with his sling. All that was needed was to finish the deed by stabbing the giant. Beheading was dramatic, to be sure, causing the Philistine army to flee, but they likely would have fled anyway because their champion had been defeated. Nephi didn't have to kill Laban, let alone behead him. Laban was in a drunken stupor laying in the street. Nephi could have stripped Laban and left. Laban was in no condition to stop Nephi. So why did David and Nephi behead Goliath and Laban? The overt explanation for the beheadings is simple. David and Nephi were acting at the command of Jesus Christ. The Lord demanded the beheadings in both cases. David said as much when he set forth to battle Goliath. He promised to kill and behead the giant in the name of the Lord. The Lord had promised David he would deliver the Philistine into his hands. The reason for the execution, for that is what it was Goliath's open defiance of the Lord. The giant not only verbally threatened Israel, he had taken its sword of state. He was prepared to use the sword against the kingdom it represented, the kingdom of God on earth. It was a crime that demanded the death penalty. The beheading of Laban was another ritual execution at the command of the Lord. The Spirit constrained Nephi 3 times to kill Laban, explaining that the Lord had delivered him for this purpose. Though Nephi was reluctant, he finally obeyed the Spirit and decapitated Laban. The reason given for the execution was the need to procure the brass plates. Nephi could have obtained the plates without beheading Laban. Still, a beheading was required. Laban merited beheading by stealing the state sword and defying the rightful king of the kingdom of God on earth. But there is more to the stories than examples of ritual execution for crimes against the state. Both stories serve a deeper purpose, the fulfillment of the ancient and planetary archetype of the combat between the warrior hero and the giant or monster. Myths and legends of the ancient world recount numerous tales of a hero, often a strapping youth, who fights and kills a monster or giant threatening the kingdom or the entire world. In many of the stories, the hero decapitates the giant. The most famous classical example is that of Perseus killing the Gorgon Medusa. Perseus, at the behest of the gods, sought out and killed the mortal Gorgon Medusa. He did so with a magical sickle given him by the god Hermes. Like David standing over the inert body of Goliath and Nephi standing over the drunken Laban, Perseus stood over the sleeping Medusa and then cut off her head. And like David, Perseus took the head as a gift to a god. When Perseus set out to kill the Gorgon, he was given the cap of Hades. This cap gave the youth the ability of invisibility. When wearing it, he could not be seen by anyone. The armor of Laban gave Nephi a similar ability. After he had donned Laban's armor and sword, he went to see Laban's servant, Zoram. Zoram was unable to recognize Nephi even when Nephi spoke to him. While it was dark, Zoram should have easily recognized his master. Clearly, Nephi was assisted with a power to mask his identity.